Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the meeting of the Mayor and Council of Princeton. It is July 10th, 2023, and we'll start with the meeting statement.
Adequate notice of this meeting was provided in accordance with the requirements of the Open Public Meetings Act, including the time, date, and location of the meeting. In addition, the agenda and all related materials were posted electronically and made available to the public on Princeton's meeting portal in advance of the meeting.
Thank you. Michelle's going to do the land acknowledgement.
Thank you. We gather today on the land of the Lenni Lenape. As members of the Princeton community, we aspire to show appreciation, respect, and concern for all peoples and our environment. We honor the Lenape and other indigenous caretakers of these lands and waters, the elders who lived here before, the indigenous today, and the generations to come.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Ms. Perrone-Lambros?
Here.
Ms. Niedergang is absent. Mr. Cohen is absent. Ms. Sachs?
Here.
Ms. Fraga?
Here.
Mr. Newland?
Here.
Mayor Frida?
Here. Thank you. If you wish, you can join us by standing, and we'll do the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, and then before we get into our regular announcements, a very special announcement. In the audience tonight, Raina Harris, who will be taking over as our municipal clerk when Dolores Williams retires. Dolores' last day is July 31st, and Raina will officially be it August 1st.
We're
Welcome.
clapping as a welcome, but no, we're not clapping because you're leaving, Dolores. We're very sad, actually.
All right. Let's go to council announcements and or reports. Anybody on council have anything of great importance? No? Terrific. Okay. Bernie, you got anything? I know Deanna and Jim do, but. Yep. All right, we'll get Deanna and Jim, and then we'll jump to Isaac.
Good evening. We have just a few reports for you tonight. Before all of the council members and the mayor, you have a copy of the new leaf branch log waste and recycling flyer. This will be printed and mailed out to all of the residents within the next week. It's much more descriptive and informative in terms of the different programs that engineering and infrastructure operations manage. So just wanted to give you an advance view of what the flyer looks like. In addition to this, the staff are working to review the brush and leaf piles that are out on the street and distribute notices of violation to those folks that still have materials on the street against the ordinance. As noticed in the mayor and council's newsletter last week, and then updated in the revised report today, we will be issuing notices of violation for folks that still have material on the roadways. Residents have 5 calendar days to remove that material from the roadway. If they do not, starting next week, our Public Works Department will be out to collect the material, and we will be issuing invoices to the property owner for our efforts to document the materials, go through this process, collect the material and dispose of it because it will be a mixed material truck. We will be taking it to a private disposal company for recycling rather than using the ecological facility. And we are just finalizing the actual cost of that, but it's going to be inclusive of all of our staff time and the disposal cost to get rid of that material. So That process of violation notice distribution has started today. We are getting phone calls already from residents, and we are seeing some people have responded and are starting to remove the material. So we do appreciate that. It's very important not to have this material on our roadways from a safety standpoint, as well as from keeping our local streams and waterways, as well as our storm sewers clean. So, those are my updates. Jim has an update on construction.
I have a comment question, and I'm sure you already do this, but just as a reminder to, also for residents who have landscapers, to encourage them to register on the municipal website, and I'm assuming that they would get notifications of the schedule as well. So that's one good way, even if the residents themselves may not be keeping up with the schedule. I know the landscapers do.
Just a quick update, the repairs to the parking garage started today, so.
I'm sorry, I had one more thing. You know, we received some inquiries today. There are still people who are having trouble finding on the website what section they are. If you could just go through that briefly.
Yes, in order to find out what section you're in for leaf, branch, and log collection, there is a link on the Department of Public Works page. It is in the left-hand side menu. It's the second item down. It's leaf, branch, and log collection is the link. And that takes you to a page that has the schedule. And below the schedule is a paragraph that actually states it. To find out what section you're in, please click this link, which is, what section am I in? That will pop up a PDF that identifies every street in the municipality and tells you what section you're in.
They could also just, when they open the website on the first page, there's a large icon for trash. And if you click on that, on the left-hand column, there's another link that takes you to the leaf and brush. So there's a couple different ways to get it, and it has the same link that Jim just talked about there also for what section am I in. So there's a couple different ways on the website to find it that are actually fairly easy. Does that answer?
Yeah.
Okay. Michelle?
And the QR code that's on here that says download the Recycle Coach app, I would imagine goes right to that schedule as well? Does that include that? Yeah, so the
Site, the QR codes will take you to the DPW site, Recycle Coach app, the Mayor and Council Weekly Newsletter update, and the new online permit system, but also we have a link for C-Click Fix.
Yep.
We have a lot of QR codes on here.
Yeah, well, thank
the
you.
QR code for recycling will take you to, a number of them will take you to the DPW page.
Great, thanks, and thanks for including the newsletter QR code. I know it's a lot of QR codes, but it's great. Thank you.
All right. Jim?
Construction, parking garage construction started today. The contractor is on the upper level. They will be closing 100 parking spaces. They will be blocking off 100 parking spaces at a time. 50 of them will be on the level where they're doing construction. 50 of them will be on the level underneath that construction in order to be prepared in case any concrete falls off the ceiling, and we don't want any cars underneath that. The public is being notified. There's been postings inside the garage. We are also preparing larger signs to put outside the garage to notify the public that there is construction going on in the garage. At the end of the month, related to the Spring Street garage, at the end of the month, the up to 60-minute free parking goes away by ordinance. It will revert back to the original up to 30-minute free parking, so people will need to be aware of that, and we'll make sure we get an article published in the newsletter soon. S. Brothers continues to work on the sewer installations on Witherspoon Street. Contrary to the email I sent out a couple of weeks ago regarding what was going to happen this week, Graduate Hotel has postponed the sidewalk replacement on Nassau Street until the end of next week or the beginning of the week of the 24th. PSE&G has had to postpone their start of their work for the gas main modernization project. They're hoping to get started next week, but bureaucratic paperwork is holding things up. They still don't have a purchase order for the contractor. We'll let the public know, and we'll let council and mayor know as soon as we have any updated information. One little piece that changed at the last minute on Friday was that Prospect Avenue, which was slated to be closed for 1 week from Olden Avenue to Murray Place, is now going to be closed for 2 weeks while Princeton University installs underground utilities. They determined that they needed to install additional conduits for electrical utilities, so that's taking them a little bit longer. The Washington Road Bridge will be closed. The Washington Road Bridge over the canal will be closed at the end of the month until October. So Washington Road will be unpassable for 3 months. So people should plan alternate routes, Harrison Street and Alexander Road. And that is the update. I got everything, I think.
Thanks, Jim. All right. Isaac, why don't you come up next, please?
Good evening, Your Honor. If I might, I have my monthly report that I'd like to give, but then we also have a statement on the outdoor dining that we'd like to read into the record if possible.
Sure.
Excellent, thank you. So again, Isaac Kramer, Executive Director of Experience Princeton. I'm pleased to report on the last, we'll assume you heard most of
We
that
did.
at home. I'm going to start again. Isaac Kramer, Executive Director with Experience Princeton. I'll begin talking about what we were working on the last 30 days, some highlights. We issued an RFP for social media and graphic design services. We were very pleased to receive 11 responses, some from the area, some from international. So we're in the process of weighing those and hope to make a selection soon. We submitted outdoor dining applications for Mamoons and Jules Thin Crust. Olives also has submitted their own. All have been approved. Volunteers are continuing to post events to our website and to social media until we hire a contractor to take that over. The next Experience Princeton meetup is planned for Thursday, July 27th at 4 p.m. outside of the Garden Theater, and there will be ice cream this time in the summer spirit. An RFP's been prepared and distributed for plantings and maintenance in vacant tree wells on Nassau Street. We'd like to especially thank staff for their input in the preparation of that. And finally, we reviewed several grant opportunities just today at our administration team meeting, and we're creating both our list of funded projects and also funders to go after those. So what are we working on in the next 30 days? We have Volunteer who is working on allowable uses to give further and detailed input to the municipality at your request. We have a sub-team formed to focus on signage ordinances. We're meeting July 21st. Our marketing team is preparing a Shop Local campaign and holiday promotions. Yes, you start that in July. The work plan for the organization is being prepared for review at our July 19th board meeting of the summary and hopeful final work plan approval at the August 16th board meeting. And last but not least, we're very pleased to add 4 new members to our board. I'm happy to announce Caleb Faring with Prince Vest, Julie Drobitz with Edens and Princeton Shopping Center, Jennifer Podolsky, the director at the Princeton Public Library, and Raul Momo of Terra Momo Restaurant Group. All are joining our board, and we're happy to have them. And in the same spirit, we thank all the people who have cycled off and for their contribution over the last year. One big item to let you know about. is at the mayor's invitation and through his connection, we were asked to weigh in on the business.nj.gov portal and provide impact to the unit of the state that runs that. And they, in turn, asked us to connect with 4 businesses to give even more detailed feedback, especially about how online forms and permits work and how we can streamline that. So I think this is really an excellent example of how, by these businesses participating and how us working together locally, we're not just benefiting businesses in Princeton, we stand to benefit businesses all throughout the state of New Jersey. So I think that's a really important success story to share. And last but not least, I do have a prepared statement on the outdoor dining ordinance, which is before you. It's brief, but if I could read it, I'd appreciate that. Given that Experience Princeton and our board, consisting of trusted businesses and property owners, and our many constituent restaurants in town, have not had adequate time to weigh in on this ordinance, we highly encourage the municipality to work directly with our organization and local businesses impacted by this ordinance prior to approval. Moving forward, to have limited business community input could create snags along the way that might otherwise be avoidable. Though together we have a shared interest in providing a welcoming and pleasant experience for outdoor dining. Further, we realize the surest way to achieve that is through a process that is easy for businesses to navigate, while also holding and keeping them accountable for management of the outdoor dining amenities that they add. Thank you.
Thanks, Isaac. And this evening, Isaac, we're going to have a work session on that, so there won't be an actual decision, so there'll still be time for input after people. I'm sure everyone will tune in to the rebroadcast of this meeting.
Some are listening now, and we'll stick around for that presentation too. Thank you,
Appreciate
Your
that.
Honor.
Were there any questions for Isaac?
I have a
I'm
comment.
sorry.
Isaac, I just would like to make a comment. I'm sorry I missed you before you left on vacation, but I think what we really need from the municipality is for Experience Princeton, the SID, to make a concerted effort to be more systematic about challenging your requests to us rather than being on an ad hoc basis, this business or that business. We really need categories of whether it be ordinance changes or, you know, we've discussed signage but the way that we can best work with you is not on an ad hoc request basis, but for you to communicate to us, as I said, systematically what changes need to be made. And, you know, whether, and I think that's something that we need to work together on, the municipality and the SID together going forward. And I guess I'm not familiar with your committee structure, but, you know, it should, I guess, each one of your committees can percolate, just like we have committees on council. I imagine that they are involved with issues, and then it would come to you, and then, you know, we have a liaison. But we need more comprehensive, organized, systematic communication in order to move forward with the changes that are needed to help. In particular, I think we're concerned about small businesses and making sure that we move to eliminate things that disproportionately impact small businesses. That's, I think, a priority. I think I'm on safe ground in saying that's a priority for everyone in the governing body, is supporting our small businesses and making sure that there aren't undue obstacles to them flourishing and thriving in our town. So.
Sure, if I could, Your Honor, well, I don't want to engage in a back and forth, you know, I'll address the chair, that, you know, I think that a principle that often works well in economic development is we try to do for one, which we hope to do for all. So I think it's inevitable to an extent, you know, that issues come up on a case-by-case basis. Having said that, you know, we also understand the importance to make good policy. So we do have numerous volunteers on 4 standing teams. There's actually 50 volunteers which are involved with the organization, and we meet monthly, and we do try to report out to the municipality both weekly, to the administrator and to the mayor and your council liaison. So they see the weekly reports. We report out monthly in these council meetings. But to show that there's a recognition and understanding of the comment the council president made, that, you know, we are able to formalize whatever policy proposals that we have and have a good way to manage that moving forward through all those different avenues that I suggested. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Isaac. Okay. We have a proclamation we're going to read, and we are going to all read part of it, and Leighton's going to start and just pass the document down, and we'll...
Proclamation, Office of the Mayor, Municipality of Princeton. A proclamation honoring Christina Rothman Iliff on the occasion of her retirement. Whereas the Municipality of Princeton is proud to recognize Christina Rothman Iliff, Digital Media Manager, for her dedication to public service on the occasion of her retirement, and whereas Christina began her career with the Township of Princeton on April 7th, 1998, in the role of dispatcher.
Whereas Christina worked as a dispatcher for over 16 years and held the title of lead dispatcher for 5 years before transitioning to call center manager, and whereas the municipality's digital presence grew, Christina was promoted to digital media manager, and
Whereas, during the COVID-19 pandemic, Christina played a vital role in keeping residents informed through Access Princeton and the municipality's communication channels. And whereas Christina will continue her professional engagement in her role as Executive Director of the New Jersey Chapter of Government Management Information Sciences, Technology Education Conference Foundation Board. Wow. Impressive. Way to go, Christina.
Whereas Christina is an avid photographer who loves to travel and intends on spending her retirement honing her skills and documenting her adventures. And whereas Christina's retirement from the municipality of Princeton will be effective August 1st, 2023, and
whereas Christine Rothman Iliff has served the community of Princeton with pride for over 25 years, and upon the occasion of her retirement is deserving of recognition and the highest commendation.
And now, therefore, be it resolved, I, Mark Frieda, Mayor of Princeton, extend the municipality's humble expression of appreciation and sincerest congratulations to Christina Rothman Iliff. We offer our best wishes for a long, happy, and healthy retirement. Thank you. Christina was going to be with us this evening, but there was a last-minute change of plans, but we will get her the official copy of that tomorrow. So thank you all for helping with that. Okay, next up is public comments for items not on the agenda. So if anyone in the room or on Zoom, if you're in the room, you just come up to the podium, state your name and your address, and you have 3 minutes to, again, talk about something not on the agenda.
Good evening, Jeff Fury, 319 Witherspoon Street. Thank you. I'm a neighbor of the site for the new Saccharin Cafe, and I think it's
Jeff, can you just get a little closer to the microphone? We're just having a hard time hearing you. Sorry.
Understand. I have a soft voice. And I welcome the cafe to the neighborhood. I think it's going to be a great addition. But I was opposed to the roasting variance. And because I have concerns about the emissions and most particularly the odors. Council should know that myself and other neighbors would be opposed to any amendment of the ordinance to allow this type of roasting use in the neighborhood. If there is a plan to promote the zoning change to do this, I would ask council to consider promote the change in a location within 1,000, not within, but outside 1,000 feet of other elementary schools in Princeton. I'm in commercial real estate. I have cited 3 cannabis locations in the state. Other communities have said because of the odor and things like that, they request 1,000 feet from any school. Just keep it that simple. Thank you very much. Any questions?
I'm sorry, did you say cannabis or coffee?
It was cannabis, but roasting. Okay, roasting emits an odor. I've also have cited 3 food processors in the state also, from famous Amos chocolate chip cookies. I was involved with the Wonder Bread Hostess Twinkies facility, and I did a vegan food processing plant.
So basically, what you're saying is there was some decisions made about spacing in terms of had cannabis gone forward in Princeton. You're asking us if the
Well-
coffee roasting issue comes to council to use that same framework for that request.
Yeah, you got to keep it away from the schools,
Yes.
because it's, and remember, it's an elementary school.
I will say that I watched the zoning board meeting, and I did see that that was on track to be punted to council, so I'm not surprised to
Yes.
see you here.
I did too. Any other questions?
Thank you, Jeff.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Anybody else in the room that has an item that's not on the agenda that they wish to talk about? Oh. Again, just, Henry, since you missed my spiel, come up, say your name, address, and you get 3 minutes.
Good evening. My name is Henry Singer. I live at 187 Laurel Circle in Princeton, and I've been meaning to come. I'm glad I happened to walk by at the right time. I have to say, I'm not here to congratulate you. Unfortunately, I'm going to report my dissatisfaction with the process. I attended a couple of the zoning board meetings, and regardless of the outcome, I have to say I was disappointed in the process. In my professional life, I've been in roles similar to what the board does, adjudicating upon requests for change in a IT setting, but the process was formal and similar, at least in significant ways. When I observed in the end the executive session and the way in which they went about making their decision, I was taken by how informal it was. I was also taken by how, in the case of, I'm speaking specifically to Sacred's petition for a use variance, they had been zoned as being manufacturing. And their determination was that it should be, that they couldn't really go against the code. They had to respect the code. I frankly don't know what that means. If there was a process that led them to that conclusion, it wasn't obvious to me. And they left us no real option for those of us that were proponents for the variance, other than to come and lobby you to change your zoning classifications or whatever. So apparently we have one manufacturing classification. I did a quick check on the internet. There are hundreds in the Uniform Code of manufacturing areas. We have one. And so I'm come here today to number one, report my dissatisfaction with the process. I encourage you to watch the video of that final adjudication, that executive session. But also I encourage you to revisit whatever decision was made or not made in how you decide what zones are appropriate. The world is moving on, and something like an artisanal manufacturing or something similar where people can do in a commercial sense what we're allowed to do in our homes, right? We have the authority to do this kind of activity in our homes, and it seems to me that some modernization of our codes is appropriate. The people you've delegated your authority threw up their hands and said you have to go back to council. I don't understand what the process is for discussion between council and the zoning board. In my life, if there was a conversation needed, we had the conversation and we would reform proactively.
Henry?
Maybe you're prevented from doing so, but I encourage you to take these points.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep, no, thank you. And we are actually prohibited from having political influence on the zoning board. They're separate from us. We can always look at our zoning ordinances and reconsider those, but we do not have an active part, we don't have any part in zoning deliberations.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you, Henry. Anyone else in the room that has anything for items not on the agenda? Anybody on Zoom? If you do, just raise your virtual hand. All right, seeing no one, I'm going to close that portion of the meeting. And next up is a Special Improvement District Budget 23203, resolution of the Mayor and Council of Princeton, introducing and approving the 2023-2024 budget of the Princeton Special Improvement District, directing the municipal clerk to publicly advertise the budget and schedule a public hearing, and directing the tax assessor to prepare an assessment roll of properties within the district based upon the budget. The public hearing has been rescheduled from tonight to July 24th, 2023, and that was due to needing enough time to properly notice all the property owners. So would someone like to move that? Rescheduling the, thank you, David. Layton's got the second. Roll call vote?
Ms. Perron-Lambros?
Yes.
Mr. Cohen?
Yes.
Ms. Sachs?
Yes.
Ms. Fraga?
Yes.
Mr. Newland?
Yes.
Thank you. Next up is a work session, outdoor dining regulations. Jim, I think you have this one.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm here this evening to discuss the proposed ordinance for Princeton outdoor dining. I will wait until table 2 is up on the screen. There we go. First, a little bit of a recap. We held a work session a couple of months ago.
I'm sorry. Hey, Jim, one second.
Sorry.
I'm sorry. Could we ask Adam if we could get that on our screens too? Oh, there it is. Never mind. Thank you, Adam. It's here. Go ahead, Jim. Sorry.
It's fine. We met a couple of months ago, and we held a work session here to discuss the need and the reasons that we want to have outdoor dining. I'm rehashing some of that right now just to refresh everyone's memory. We have a need in the business community to expand the dining footprint, increase foot traffic. Outdoor dining does do that. Create a vibrant streetscape and a lively sidewalk space. So the goals of what we were trying to do with the proposed new ordinance are to meet that. The challenges that we face are that one size does not fit all. We have both wide and narrow sidewalks. We have to balance the need of all the users, the motorists, people parking cars, the businesses themselves, the diners, the sidewalk users, whether that be hopefully not bicyclists and scooters, but pedestrians at the very least, and a whole parking and streetscape nature of our downtown business district. Plus, we have a not so unique in the state of New Jersey, but we have the issue of municipal streets versus state highways. And the state highway comes into play on Nassau Street in particular, where the state has indicated that outdoor dining is not allowed, and we have applied for a permit as the municipality to request permission to allow that outdoor dining. So, as you can see, we have...
I'm sorry, Jim, just by way of clarification, no outdoor dining even on the sidewalks?
Correct. Anywhere within the right-of-way of the state highway.
Okay, because we have a fair amount of outdoor dining on
Yes, we do.
Nassau Street right now. Okay.
and that outdoor dining currently exists without a permit. So we have applied for a permit from Baird Lane to Markham Road. Hopefully the state will issue that permit soon. They are reviewing it as we speak.
Right. Let me just jump in, Jim, because
Yeah.
I think we should recognize that staff has spent a lot of time working with the state, because I think the state started out with everyone would have to apply for a permit, and our staff went back to the state and said, are you applying the standard to every other town and municipality in the state and not just us? And oh, by the way, why is every business going to have to do this? And the state did come back and say, well, Princeton as an entity can file for the permit, and it'll cover the entire distance, as Jim just said. So I just wanted to recognize that a lot of time and effort has gone into getting this far along already. Thanks, Jim.
Thank you. So our current ordinance, I want to run over the current ordinance. We have a current sidewalk cafe ordinance. It requires that there be an unimpeded pedestrian passageway at least 6 feet in width. It also requires an unimpeded, safe, and speedy ingress and egress to and from buildings, but does not define what that unimpeded ingress and egress is. It provides no clearances for other safety reasons. For instance, doesn't say anything about how far away from a fire hydrant it might need to be, or from a street intersection or a driveway. It does identify requirements for litter control and sidewalk, but only identifies it as required, which is a very subjective clause to have in an ordinance. It requires that the furniture be commercial grade wood or metal. It only allows one row of tables and chairs, and the width taken up on the sidewalk can be no more than 6 feet. The hour of operation is between 7 a.m. and 10 p.m., and the annual license runs from April 1st to March 31st. So it's an annual, all-year license. However, and I'm getting into some of the reasons why I'm putting these out, but what we're proposing are some changes to these items to clarify it better. But one of the problems with an annual license is if the furniture is out there all year long and we have a snowstorm, we're either snow plowing and covering the furniture and possibly damaging it, or it's in the way for us to clear the sidewalks. So you'll see that we're asking for something different. So the little graphic that you see here represents what can happen, except you can't have two separate rows. You can either have it up against the building, or you can have it near the sidewalk, as long as you keep a 6-foot pedestrian passageway. The next picture I'm going to show you is actually Boulder, Colorado, where they have a similar 6-foot pedestrian passageway requirement. But I think everybody in the room and on Zoom can see that that's not 6 feet. There's a lot of stuff going on here that causes it to be encroached upon, flower pots, the umbrellas hanging over, barriers, all kinds of things. And it's something similar to what we have here in Princeton right now, because we haven't defined any of the other zones. So all we're saying is that you need to provide 6 feet for pedestrians. So in Princeton, we have a sort of mix of opportunities on the street and mix of uses on the street that pedestrians can't seem to find their way around in some cases. So we have been talking about this for several months of making something much more uniform, much more easy to handle. So our proposed ordinance will define zones. It will define what is known as a frontage zone, which is the area right up against the facade of the building. The pedestrian passageway, which is the 6-foot passageway that we are proposing, it's similar to the current ordinance. And the furnishing zone, which will also include a 3-foot buffer to the street, so that if there's a car parked there, a passenger can open their car door without hitting somebody sitting in a chair. Or if somebody needs to get around the zone after parking a bicycle, for example, which would happen on Witherspoon Street. The proposed ordinance will also identify safe access for fire safety and accessibility. It will define the fixtures and furnishings the same way that they're defined now, only we will get a little bit more detailed in planters and dividers that go out on the street and where they can be, instead of hanging them off the railing and impeding on the pedestrian passageway, as you saw in that picture. It will establish standards on signs, banners, enclosures, coverings, noise, lighting, heaters, and refuse and litter, which has been a problem in our current ordinance. And it will provide for a more streamlined licensing process. Right now, it's rather cumbersome and goes through a lot of reviews. It will still go through a lot of reviews. We do have to have it go through different departments, but we are now using OpenGov, and we're going to have an online process that will make it more streamlined. So, what are we proposing? The unimpeded 6-foot wide pedestrian passageway is still is the same as before. There has been some discussion that really is not enough. So one of the things that we want to discuss this evening is how council feels on expanding that width. We are defining the clearances. There's a 3-foot buffer from the street curb that did not exist in the current ordinance. 2-foot clearances to the building entrances so that someone in a wheelchair might be able to get around the tables and be able to access the restaurant inside. Plus the ability for our firefighters or other emergency services to get in and out of the building in case of emergency. 3-foot clearance to fire hydrants so we don't have the same issue where our firefighters can't get to the hydrant, or once they get to the hydrant, can't get through to get to the fire. 4-foot clearance between seating and barriers. Again, a safety issue in case of emergency, people having to be able to leave the outdoor dining area and tripping over each other. We want to have some clearance between any kind of barriers that are placed out on the street. And then a 10-foot clearance to driveways, bus stops, and street corners for visibility purposes. Having outdoor dining right at the street corner blocks the visibility of pedestrians stepping into the street and a motorist not seeing them, or a motorist not seeing another motor vehicle as it goes out into the intersection, and results in motorists having to creep out into the pedestrian crosswalk in order to see around the activity on the street corner. Litter control program required with the application. Currently, we don't have anything in the ordinance that specifically states that the applicant must tell us how they're handling litter control. It simply says you must handle your litter control. We want a plan. We want a written document that tells us how you're going to take care of your trash. Sidewalk restoration required upon removal. All our ordinance currently says is cleaning as required. Who's going to require that? I'm certainly not going to be out on the street telling a restaurant owner, hey, you've got to power wash this. We've got to put something behind it. So we're updating that in the ordinance. Again, sticking with the commercial grade wood and metal furniture, we don't want plastic chairs and tables out on the street. We are proposing to expand the hours of operation from 7 a.m. up until midnight. Hopefully, I think that is a desire of the business community. And we're proposing that the permit, the license for outdoor dining can be year-round only in the frontage zone, only from April 1st to October 31st in the furnishing zone. Again, for the purposes of snow clearing and not damaging anything in the furnishing zone. So here's a few scenarios. The first scenario is if we have a wide enough sidewalk and the ordinance specifies that this scenario can only happen if the sidewalk from the front of the building to the curb is 16 feet or more in width. It doesn't fit if it's less than 16 feet. So this would be dining in both the frontage zone and the furnishing zone, a pedestrian passageway in between. with the 3-foot buffer as well. So when we add everything up with the typical size of chairs and tables, 16 feet is the minimum where this can fit. The second scenario is the dining in the furnishing zone only, which puts the pedestrian passageway up against the building. One of the issues we have to deal with when we're reviewing a plan when it's up against the building is, are there obstructions up against the building? For example, basement access doors. We have to consider those obstructions because we never know when they're going to be opened. And if we want a 6-foot passageway and that basement access door is open, we no longer have a 6-foot passageway. So that's something that we have to look at upon application on a case-by-case basis. And the third scenario is dining in the, is dining in the frontage zone, which is dining only up against the principal facade of the building, and then the pedestrian passageway is between that and the street, along with that 3-foot buffer. And that 3-foot buffer, by the way, is there not just for somebody parking a car and opening up a door. It's also there for our street trees. It's there for our signs, our meters, trash cans, and possibly other furnishings that the municipality might put out in the buffer zone. So those are the 3 scenarios that we see. Our proposed outdoor dining license, although this slide looks like there's a lot to it, we hope to be able to streamline it again with the online process. We will be requiring an application fee and an annual fee. We will need a scaled dining layout plan with furnishing specifications. That scaled plan, however, can be hand-drawn. We're currently looking at some that are hand-drawn that are being used to approve, as you heard from Mr. Kramer. Mamoon's was recently approved, and Jules Thin Crust Pizza was recently approved. A couple others have been approved with hand-drawn, but to scale. We need to see dimensions. How far apart are the tables? Where are the chairs? And what's the size of the chairs? And where are they in relation to the pedestrians? Litter control program, we've requested that. We're going to be requesting that we get a written document. And when we say, we're calling it a program instead of a plan, because when we say plan, people think, well, we'll just give you a plan that shows where we're going to put our trash can. No, we need to know how what is the procedure that's going to take place in order to make sure that litter is controlled. As always, they will be required to give us an insurance certificate, and if they're serving alcohol, they have to show us proof of alcohol rules and regulations. That's in the current ordinance, and we're just repeating what's in the into the new ordinance. The application review process will include engineering, zoning, police, fire, and health, as it always does. But again, we're hoping to streamline it, and we're pulling it into the infrastructure and operations department so that it comes out of the clerk's office, and Deanna, as deputy administrator, will oversee that. And again, we need the NJDOT permit for Nassau Street, which gives us, the municipality, the ability to issue outdoor dining licenses on the sidewalks on Nassau Street. One thing that came up when we gave this presentation to the business community was we did have in the ordinance that it was also going to apply to private property. And we realized that outdoor dining on all private property that is not the sidewalk goes through a planning board process, or planning or zoning. So if the ordinance specifically says in it now that it does not apply to those outdoor dining facilities that have planning or zoning approval under a site plan approval process. So tonight, what we want to discuss with council is what should that pedestrian passageway width be? Just for context, our current sidewalks range from 4 to 6 feet. Our standard sidewalk width is 5 feet. We, in engineering, feel that 6 feet is wide enough, but we've heard from other entities within our own municipality on staff that 6 feet tends to get crunched, and pedestrians, particularly in the busy Saturday nights, it's a very narrow passageway when you have a very busy evening. Nice night like, well, this Saturday was pretty hot, wasn't it, Justin? But, you know, on a good night, 6 feet it's very crowded. So an expansion of that, but that's got to balance the needs of the business community to have the outdoor dining. If we start expanding the pedestrian passageway, it's going to encroach on some of the other zones. One other concern was that the furnishing zone, which is the zone up near the curb, is truly more municipal property than the zone right in front of the building. So there's a question as to whether or not we don't allow dining in that furnishing zone and only allow it up against the building in the frontage zone. The fee structure is another issue to be resolved. The current fee structure is based on the number of seats, but it's grouped so that if you have 1 chair out there or 8 chairs, the cost is $200. If it's between 8 and 12, the cost is $300. If it's between 12 and 24, it's $600. Our proposal for this ordinance is that we just have a $25 fee per seat, and that seat would also be applied to benches, based on 2-foot increments per person, so that a 4-foot bench is 2 seats, 6-foot 3 feet, etc. And then the last one is advertising. We have worked into this ordinance a provision where umbrellas could have advertising on them as long as they advertise the establishment for which they belong, not logos like Budweiser or Coca-Cola or something like that. They would still be subject to the zoning ordinance, and our sign ordinance may or may not allow that, so that's another review that would have to be done to see if the addition of more signage on the street can be allowed under zoning. And those are the 4 issues that we see, and we're opening up for discussion and questions.
Okay, so why don't we're just going to start with Michelle and work our way right on down.
Okay, thank you. This is great. A lot of work has been put into this. So I'll just go from the top. So on the clearances, I think that whether it's 4, 5, or 6 feet or more for the pedestrian passageway, I think going to whether it's scenario 1, 2, or 3 is dependent on the width of the street and which street. So are you looking at, I would venture to say that the street would be dependent, or the scenario would be dependent on what street it is. So in other words, if it's Nassau Street, how wide is Nassau Street?
How wide is the sidewalk?
The sidewalk is, it varies, but it's around 20 feet.
So, okay, so if it's 20 feet.
Until you get further out onto toward Pine and Maple, where it gets much narrower.
It narrows,
Yeah.
okay. But at 20 feet, you could have pedestrian, and you could have scenario 1, which you have both frontage and furnishing
Correct.
zones, and still plenty of room. But if you go to Spring Street, or even now Witherspoon Street, I think even though we've widened the sidewalks, I don't believe that they're 20 feet. I think they're less than that. So I think that we would have to apply it by street.
Oh, yes.
Is
We
that
would.
is that what with the
Yes.
is that the intent?
Yeah, well, we wouldn't apply the ordinance by street. We're defining the zones, and the zones vary as long as there's a 6-foot pedestrian passageway. But what we are saying is that if it is less than 16 feet, you cannot have dining in both zones.
Okay.
We're saying that by saying for a street that's 16 feet or sidewalk that's 16 feet or wider, you can have dining in both frontage and furnishing zones.
Okay. I mean that seems very logical. Okay. So a couple other comments that I have. In the 3-foot buffer to the street curb, I think we need that in most places because we have tree wells and such as well that are at least 3 foot. My only question would be, would you need the 3-foot buffer in any area where you don't have parking on that side? I was thinking of Witherspoon Street, but I don't think Witherspoon Street is wide enough to have a furnishing zone anyway.
Well, again, the 3 feet isn't just for parking, it's also for,
Tree wells.
tree wells, signs, meters,
Okay.
our own trash cans, any other furnishings that the municipality may want to put out, like benches.
Bike racks.
Okay. And then I think all the clearances make sense. The only other comment I have, though, is the 3-foot clearance to the fire hydrants. I mean, if the fire trucks are there and they need to get access to the fire hydrants, I don't think people are going to be sitting there finishing dinner if the building is burning.
People won't be, but tables and chairs will be.
So they're
Wait.
just in the way?
We're trying to make sure that our firefighters and emergency people don't have to move chairs and tables out of the way.
Okay, all right. I just was trying to envision how somebody's sitting there. Well, wait a minute, I haven't had dessert yet. All right, and then, no, I think this is really good. I just want to talk about the litter control, or do we want to finish on the clearances and then come back to litter control? Why don't we stay on one topic?
I think we should probably stay on the clearances
Let's stay on clearances
first,
and
'cause
scenarios, and then come back.
everything kind of gets driven by that.
Because I have other comments.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
David?
So I guess I have a slightly different take on the clearances, specifically the pedestrian passageway width. I think it has to vary depending on numbers of pedestrians, not the width of the street or the width of the sidewalk. And I don't know how available that information is, but clearly to me on Nassau Street on a summer weekend, 6 feet isn't enough. 8 feet may not be enough of pedestrian clearance, just sheerly based on the number of people who are trying to make their way. So I know it makes life more difficult, but if there's a way to measure the number of pedestrians, I think that would be the best way to decide how wide the passageway needs to be. And I just wanted to add one more item to your bullet list here of issues to resolve, which is whether these furnishings are shared or not. They're in the public right-of-way. I think that, we have different things happening at different places currently. For instance, if you go down to Nassau Seafood and Small World on Nassau Street, there's actually enclosed outdoor seating, which is available to anybody who wants to sit in it. I think in the evenings, probably. Right, Blue Point, it's reserved for Blue Point at night, or no. But I think that, I'm very concerned about the barriers that we saw in the photo in the towards the beginning of the exhibit. I think it was in Boulder, Colorado. I think that, if we allow dividers, barriers around this seating, it will become privatized. And there will be a strong sense that it's not available to the general public. It also just aesthetically really balkanizes the streetscape, and based on the criteria that you helpfully laid out, Jim, right at the beginning of having an energized and attractive pedestrian zone, I think those barriers create the exact opposite of that. I want to acknowledge the complexity when there's a restaurant that actually has waiters serving the tables versus carry-out establishments. I don't know if, maybe Trishka can reflect on the legalities of making a distinction like that. But maybe the other solution is to, allow some enclosure for the frontage zone, but definitely not in the outer zone. I forget what you called it. The furnishing zone.
Furnishing.
Yeah, but I'm really concerned about the barriers and the impact that'll have on the both the pedestrian experience and the aesthetics of the streetscape.
Make a comment.
Yeah.
So there's a lot here, and this is like so many things that we deal with as a council. We are tasked with weighing all of the up and down sides to the pedestrians, to the business owners, to there's circulation, there's safety. I'm again, from a process perspective, I'm concerned that this was going to be an ordinance introduction tonight, and it's obvious that even among council members, among the governing body, we really had very different notions about what was being planned for, and I would really like to hear. I would like to spend some time hearing from. It's hard to make a decision as an abstraction about this thing. I would like to hear from different business owners, spend a little time hearing what the implications are for them from all the different constituencies that are, stand to gain or be inconvenienced or from any of these things. So I feel like I just can't make any grand pronouncements today. I really feel like I need to hear more to understand what these mean in practice for the individuals who are going to be experiencing it. So,
Thanks. Leticia?
It's a lot to process, but as I have always said that, whatever policy we're going to establish and we're considering, and Jim, you did start out by saying that it's not a one-size-fits-all, but whatever policy it is, I just want it to be fair and equitable to all of our businesses, so that if there's a establishment that's on a narrow sidewalk or wide, that it's going to apply to all. That's going to be equitable and fair to all. That's my main concern.
Leighton?
Thanks, Mayor. Yeah, my only message, if you will, is that we as a community and as a town, as we look to grow, have on our minds that this is not a win-lose situation. And it's not like the businesses win and the pedestrians or the residents lose, or the residents win and the businesses lose. What we are really trying to do is take this town into the future. And one of the things I would just, as a precautionary note, on Nassau Street, we are very food heavy. We don't have a lot of non-food stores really, if you look at the whole of Nassau Street. And one of the things I think we want to be careful with is with regard to frontage and the location against the stores and the location off of the stores is how we do that. Because my thinking is if we have everything against the stores and it's food driven, that could be intimidating for those small businesses who aren't purveyors of food. Because just think about when you're walking down the whole of Nassau Street, what you're going to see is as you walk down Nassau Street, everywhere is going to be chairs and benches for eating, everywhere you go. It's either going to be to the left of you or to the right of you. So the more room we give the pedestrians, the better this is going to be. I think we should maximize the walking space, because if you don't maximize the walking space, you're not going to have people shopping anyway. So there's a lot to unpack here, and I think we should be very careful and very cautious. Thank you.
Thanks, Leighton. So
Mark.
let me just jump in with a couple thoughts. In addition to the fire hydrants, I think the fire department would be very interested in the fire department connections on the
The
front of most
connections as
buildings and
well.
having access to those.
Yes.
And I think the discussion has to, as Leighton referred to, there's other businesses besides restaurants. So we have to be fair to both. I'm a little concerned about this 16-foot measurement that you mentioned in order to allow the furnishing zone. So if there's a 6-foot pedestrian zone, then I guess each row of tables is only 5 feet, which means you really can only have 3 seats per table. Because if you had a seat on all 4 sides of that table, somebody's going to be out in the, well, 2 of them probably, from each row are going to end up in the pedestrian right away or whatever, passageway or whatever we're calling it. So I just want to make sure that that's like stipulated very clearly, because I think we all know going to a restaurant, there's always that person that thinks their seat has to be out as far as possible, and they're bumping up against the guy or woman behind them and not allowing any room for somebody to walk through, and they think that's acceptable. So I really don't want to see us come into people complaining about somebody sitting at a seat because they can't walk by on the sidewalk. I would also think that on Witherspoon Street, to David's point, on Witherspoon Street in Nassau from Van Deventer up through Witherspoon at least, there are so many people on Witherspoon that we just redid and on Nassau. I don't think the 6-foot pedestrian width is anywhere near enough. I mean, we could look at, there's I won't mention the name of the restaurant, but it's really close to Bainbridge House, and they have done tables on both sides and allowed a little bitty aisleway that's supposed to be 5 feet, and it rarely is. And that is a heck of a choke point on Nassau Street. So I'm glad that you're saying, we really got to have some set standards. But I think, as I think Michelle said it also, is, we got to really think about where is it and how are we going to make this work. So one thing in my mind is, do we think about this in a couple phases? And do we start with, we're going to do the frontage zone only, let that go for a season, and then see if it makes sense to even add the furnishing zone later, or vice versa, although I have a lot of concerns about the furnishing zone. But anyway, we could figure out which is which. But I just don't know that we want to put so much in place all at once. I'd hate to figure out that afterwards it doesn't work, and businesses have put a lot of money into tables, chairs, whatever, and then we're saying, geez, this doesn't really work. You got to get rid of that stuff or not use it. Anyway, those are my thoughts. Why don't we start at the end and come back down on clearances, and then
Thanks.
hopefully
Okay.
we move to something else.
Okay, just a couple things. I mean, first of all, remember, we were responding to what residents wanted. They wanted more outdoor dining. We extended and we spent an expansive amount of money on Witherspoon Street to allow for outdoor dining. And COVID, the silver lining on COVID in that situation was that it was a pilot to have a lot of outdoor dining. And the nice thing I think that we saw, I mean, there are good things, there are lessons learned, right? So one of the good things we saw was that people did share their tables. Those tables at like Mamoun's and Olives, they were used after hours or before hours, up and down the street. What we also learned was trash was a huge problem. So that's why I want to get to the litter situation, because that is really, this ordinance can really help solve some of those issues, because we never had a plan of real.
Can we just finish the clearance thing?
Yeah, but I'm just,
Okay.
I just want to say that this, what engineer, Deanna and Jim and team have put together is really answering some of the questions that we've had in trying to solve some of the problems. So I do think, just to wrap up, that to Leighton's point, having activation on the street, having people sitting, gathering, having a cup of coffee or a meal together, that is attractive, activating, and that's good for the retailers. I know the retailers on Witherspoon Street and Nassau loved having all that outdoor dining. They said it was really good for business, and they saw an uptick. So I think when you look at the economics of it and the vitality and vibrancy of it, it's really good. But it needs to look nice. It needs to not be plastic furniture. It needs to be clean, and we need to make sure we have those plans in place. So I think we just have to have, it's not one size fits all, so we just need to figure out the scenarios for the various streets. So I'm open to that.
Okay. David, we're just going to work our way down again.
Thanks. Two things. I want to speak to your point, Mark, about the 16 feet, and it's even worse than you described, actually, because you didn't count the 3-foot curb zone. So if you need 16 feet, 3 feet at the curb, 6 feet for pedestrians, that's 9, and you've got 7 feet left over for seating. And if you split that into 2 zones, I think it's a real problem. I'd be curious, just to hear Jim talk about how he arrived at 16 feet as something that would work with both the frontage.
Or we could just agree that we're going to question that. I don't want to put anybody on the spot, because I think...
Oh, I'm sure he's thought about it, though,
Right,
so...
I thought we were just offering commentary on...
Was it LRK had that? Okay. But I didn't rely on LRK.
Yeah.
And we put in 16 feet minimum because you could put a 2-foot wide table up against your building with chairs parallel to the building, not
Right.
sticking out into the pedestrian zone. And you could do the same thing on the other side. So you're really only taking up 4 feet. And we did take into consideration 6 plus 3.
Yeah.
So
I
we were
figured.
basically saying, if you have less than 16 feet, there's no way you're doing this. That
Yeah.
was really what we were looking at.
Okay. And the other comment I wanted to make about shared use, and I'm glad to hear Michelle say that, that's really what you had in mind as well. It's really a much more efficient way to use the space, because at times when a restaurant isn't open, people from elsewhere can use the seating instead of feeling like it's off limits to them. In addition, even if the restaurant's open and, one restaurant's really busy and one's not so busy, there might be a little spillover from the restaurant next door. And I think it's better than having empty tables. It's really, when we think about parking, we think about shared parking between different uses, and I think we should be thinking about this in the same way. And then just the last thing, and this goes to Leighton's point, which is I think that, in a way this is kind of misnomer. It says outdoor dining, but it really should be outdoor commerce, because we do have a number of stores, like Labyrinth Books, like Landau's before they left, that put merchandise out on the sidewalk. It's just as energizing as dining seating, and there's no reason why we should be, excluding those other retail businesses from being able to take advantage of our beautiful wide sidewalks.
Okay. Sticking to clearances.
So just to underscore Michelle's point, which was really an important one, that there was a tremendous request, repeated, widespread requests from the community at large over many years for outdoor dining. It was one of the things that people wanted. Now, I will say that they wanted it in Palmer Square, but we found a nearby thoroughfare to accommodate that request. So it was something that was that the town has invested millions of dollars in making possible. So we're now sort of at the end part of that process, and this is just the final refining of that. So I don't want anyone who's been excited about this to feel discouraged. We're still really moving forward with the vision. And also, absolutely for the non-dining establishments, there's so much, research to show that bookstores, other establishments that are not dining benefit tremendously from the foot traffic that comes from people who are coming to get an ice cream or coffee or whatever. So I will say, of all the things that bother me, that worry me the least, it's the 6-foot right-of-way. I know there's a basic principle in the planning world that if you have traffic in one highway or one lane, that's very congested, no matter how many more additional lanes you create, it's just as congested, and I see our engineer nodding. So I am not sure, that's going to help, and I think the sense of vibrancy that comes from lots of people around dining and talking and eating and drinking and all of that is it's exciting, and people will wend their way through that, and I'm just not that concerned about that. The two things that are most important to me are, one, that the litter situation, that it's clear that
Can
each
we stick to clearances?
is
and
that
come
not
back?
clearances?
No.
Okay. I stand corrected. Just wait till we
Sorry.
get to the next
Yeah,
one. Okay. Is the paying for is that part of the clearance, paying for your stall?
That's not.
Okay. All right. So,
But you'll have plenty of time to talk about both of those
okay.
soon.
Okay. I will wait.
Thank you.
I cede my
Leticia.
time.
I want to echo what the points my colleagues already made, but also point out that, when Michelle, I think maybe you too, David, mentioned about the fact that the establishments, when the tables and chairs are not being used, that others were able to use them. But not all establishments were welcoming, and I'm not sure that that's something that we can require. There's one establishment that comes to mind that specifically had signs on their tables that said that no one else could sit there that was not a customer, but even when they weren't being used. So I don't know that that's something that we can require, but it would be nice to have everybody be sharing the space.
Leighton?
Yeah, just briefly, this is all a great idea with regard to the food, and I think that it's an opportunity also for the CID to get involved at this time, because it could be, I think, very worthwhile to kind of circle the wagons. And I really think that, as in that movie, if you build it, they will come. If we get this right, we can really energize Nassau Street in a way that will bring people and prosperity here and progress all at the same time.
Okay, so, hey, Isaac, let me put you on the spot for just a second. You've heard a lot of this. Do you have a process where you can help share what is being discussed tonight with the members of the CID, and then have input brought together and come back with some common themes or thoughts or something? Or do you have a plan on how the CID might be able to help with this?
Yeah, thanks for bringing me back up, Your Honor. I appreciate the opportunity to address this. I think it probably lends itself best to an ad hoc working group where we'll tap into our economic development team and also our streetscapes team and try to find people who have expertise and capacity that relates to this. We should also utilize some of our business owners, both that have outdoor dining, but some that aspire to have outdoor dining, so we can get a representative sampling. I also want to give credit to the engineering staff for walking through the first 4 outdoor dining applications with us, and we learned from every one of them. So my recommendation would be to take that ad hoc working group model. I think we'd be more than happy to invite municipal staff if they'd like to be part of that working group as well.
Okay, thanks. So, Jim, I know that we have not given you unified, clear guidance. We are very good at giving you mud, and you can try to figure out somehow how to see through it. But do you have specific questions for us on the clearance, or can I move on to one of the other points? And I'm not looking for us to come to an absolute, obviously it's a work session, we're not making decisions tonight. We're just trying to help move the process along. So, but if you have questions that would be helpful to you, that's great to ask, but if not, I don't want to keep saying the same stuff over and over.
No, I think we've heard what you are concerned with, and we'll take it under advisement and try to figure out how to respond appropriately.
Okay, thanks. And let me ask our planning officer to jump in. Justin, go
Yes.
ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. Since this is a work session, I figured if I get a chance to just add an alternative.
Yeah, and don't worry about turning around to just.
Okay,
Don't,
just talk into it.
You're not being rude, just speaking to the microphone so people on Zoom can hear you too.
Got it. Thank you. So I think I'm really concerned about making sure the pedestrians still have a way to walk through, and making sure this is easy to enforce, easy to understand, easy to walk through businesses that are interested in doing this. One of the other things that I've tossed around is measuring from the curb inwards. So essentially, from the face of the building to whatever line we decide, is sufficient to give over to the pedestrians walking and all the other things that were mentioned, would be where businesses, whether it's dining or commerce, could put their wares or their tables, again, along the facade of the building. And then from that line over to the curb would still be, available to the public. And then the next step, you mentioned phasing, could be seeing if this works and then adding this frontage zone or furnishing zone. I keep getting them confused. Or working with the CID or working as, the municipality to invest in more benches, more tables, more things that are publicly available. Like all the folks that get their subs at Hoagie Haven and then sit out there on the bench and eat, or whoever else with these grab and go, get your coffee and your book and sit in front of Labyrinth. So I just wanted to throw that out there while we are having this work session. Thank you.
Thank you. You're not letting us move to the next one?
I have a question. I'm not, but it's really quick.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
So I know, as Jim, you started out saying that an application for outdoor dining on private property is different than outdoor dining in the public realm. But the question I have is, what about an application that straddles? In other words, I understand that, Witherspoon Street, I think the public right-of-way is face of building to face of building, but that along Nassau Street, that some of the businesses own part of the sidewalk. And so the question is, how does that impact this ordinance?
I'll answer it. It's a legal question, but I'll answer it. The ordinance defines the sidewalk from the face of the building to the curb. So, and defines it as the public, I think it defines it as public sidewalk. Wait a second. The paved surface intended for the passage of pedestrians and situated between and extending from any building to the street, whether public or private property. So that's how it's defined for the purposes of this outdoor dining.
I have a question.
However, if said property owner has a board approval, either planning board or zoning board, for outdoor dining on their private portion of that sidewalk, then our permit does not apply. They do not need to seek a permit for that piece because it already has approval from a board of jurisdiction. But if they wanted to extend beyond that property line, that's where they would have to come to us to get a permit.
And in that instance, the plan would encompass the entire sidewalk. If they wanted,
Yes, because we would have to see
it would
how
all be
it
taken
works
together.
with the pedestrian passageway.
Yeah.
Correct.
Thank you.
Mia?
Yeah, Isaac, I wanted to request that you could provide the council with examples of what's happening in towns across the state. We don't need to reinvent the wheel. I know there are a lot of communities that are much farther along with outdoor dining than we are. It would really be great to have those examples and hear how they've worked it out. I know there have been ordinances that we've passed and been ahead of the curve, and other council members from around the state have reached out to us. I think this is an instance in which we could benefit from what other municipalities have learned, possibly the hard way. And again, I just wanted to reiterate, it would be very helpful to hear the granular information for all the different, merchants along Witherspoon and Nassau, just to get a sense of the implications of this for them. So, thanks.
Okay. So let's try to tackle frontage zone only in as few words as possible, like yes, no, or something very close to that. So we're going to start down here.
I'm still open to having furnishing zones where it's available, where it's large enough, where it's wide enough, but I don't think that's really going to apply to many areas. So,
I agree with Michelle.
This is the frontage zone only, or consider just doing one zone, or are we still open to thinking of both the frontage and the furnishing zones?
I'm open to both.
Okay, thank you.
I agree with Michelle and David.
The frontage only, or frontage and furnishing still under consideration?
Frontage only is closer to the curb?
Yeah, no, frontage is along the building, furnishing zone is the one 3 feet off the curb.
I would go with furnishing.
Okay.
Wait, what did Michelle and David say?
no, I said that we're frontage always, and furnishing where available, where it's wide
Yes.
enough. That's what I'm saying.
That's
Yeah.
what, yes,
Yeah.
that's, I think we're all in agreement on that.
I would say, yeah, maybe to both, but the thing that concerns me is if you're doing the furnishing zone, you got the trees, like Jim, as you said, you got the trees, you got the trash cans, you got benches, you got this and you got that. So by the time you account for all of that, how much space is actually left? So, I mean, maybe at the luck of the draw in my restaurant, I've got nothing out in front and I can take advantage of it, but David's restaurant right next door has got 2 trees and a bench, and he's got no room to do it. So anyway, I just think it's,
Case by case.
Case by case.
yeah, it could be case by case, but
Yeah,
I just want to make sure that it's got to be real clear to folks that, as you said, one size doesn't fit all. So just because there's a possibility of a furnishing zone, there's probably going to be a whole bunch of places where it just won't work. Anyway, so is that
Mayor,
clear, Jim?
I changed my mind. I would go with both.
That is clear, and one of the other options
Both.
that...
Okay, well,
I'm sorry.
go ahead.
One of the other options is we could say you can have it not in both, but in one or the other. So I'm thinking of a particular one that we just approved where 3 tables can fit in the furnishing zone because there's enough width and there's nothing obstructing it in terms of a tree well or any other amenity. But if we were to make that business put it up against the building, he'd only fit one.
Yeah.
This is why I think we really want to give staff flexibility
Exactly.
to work administratively
Yep.
with
Agreed.
each applicant, because
Yeah.
whatever
Exactly.
that
Yeah, I mean,
involves.
somebody might have Belco doors and a fire department connection, and I don't know what else right along the building, and like you said, they get half a table. But,
Yeah.
okay, anyway,
Great. I agree. Yeah.
okay, so, yeah,
Okay.
that's up in the air,
Perfect.
or more case by case. All right, fee structure. Let's jump on fee structure and just work our way down.
So again, I think that this is really, I think it's really a staff call. What makes more sense? It sounds like an application fee. I think like $250. I think was thrown out there for an annual application fee plus $25 a seat, and a bench would be either 2 seats, 3 seats, 4 seats, whatever, and it would be on an annual basis. I'm just going to throw a crazy brainstorm idea. I don't know if it's good, bad, or whatever, but hearing the idea of having communal seats and then some being where it would be reserved for, a full-service restaurant where it'd be weighted tables, maybe there could be something done in the fee structure that would reflect the difference. So in other words, it would be less expensive if it's communal and, more expensive if it's not. So I just throw that out there. This is something that the business community and staff can work together on and come up with what makes sense and what's fair. And I just want to throw one thing out too, that's not really fee structure, but while we're talking about it, is on the communal, we need to remember when it's communal, we also need to have somebody cleaning it at all hours.
We
so
will
that-
get to litter.
So we'll get to the litter,
We'll
because I'm
get to
really
litter.
anxious to get to the litter. But that's what I would throw out as far as the fee structure.
Okay, David?
Yeah, again, I'm comfortable leaving it to staff. I think $25 a seat is fine, if that's staff's proposal. I have a little bit of problem, and again, we've gotten some guidance from council that, giving away the public right-of-way is not something we can legally do. And I've heard, we might, if it really is private seating, we might have to bid it out and not give it to the business who actually has the frontage. That's one legal opinion I've heard. So I think we're better off keeping it simple at $25 a seat and generally require it to be shared seating, maybe not at all hours, but keeping it in the public realm in that way.
Thank you. Mia? On the fee? Any thought?
I think that the municipality should be appropriately compensated. I mean, again, this is a balance. We want to support and incentivize our, small business owners to be able to thrive. On the other hand, if we are making available, public space for private use, we should be compensated for that. I don't know where that balance falls, so I'd love to hear from Isaac and from the CID how other communities have struck that balance.
Thank you. Leticia?
I would agree with staff recommendations.
Thank you. Leighton, on the fee?
I too agree with staff recommendations.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I tend to agree with you guys, although I think I really want to know how we handle litter, because it is a public asset, the sidewalk. Everybody in town's paying for the sidewalk to be there. And I would be concerned if we end up having a lot of extra costs to clean the sidewalk, pick up litter, et cetera. So if the ordinance addresses significantly enough how all that is going to be addressed by the businesses taking advantage of having outdoor dining, and that's not a great increased cost for us, then the fee can be much more minimal. But if that burden is purely on the town, then I think there should be a higher cost, because that's, anyway, there's got to be some middle of the road there somewhere.
Yeah.
Okay, so, sorry.
What is the answer to that? Because I feel like that is the crux that we're still not getting to here. Are these individual applications are these stalls being considered essentially like an extension of the store where only their food, their wait staff, whatever, that they're purchasing their tables, they're responsible for the litter? The way it works, from what I understand, as it stands now, they're submitting an application to the town where they, need some sort of an architectural drawing, even if maybe it's hand-drawn. But it's like they're making a financial investment in that space, and will continue, from what I understand, and we've asked that it be maintained with, presumably a waste plan. So that's one thing, and that I think, then the price would be more minimal. If it's a more general public space where anyone can come and sit, and the tables are, purchased by the town, and the cleaning is done by the town, then that's another situation. Sorry.
No,
The former was the maximal, this was the minimal, yeah.
You're good, because litter and waste and cleanup is the topic of the moment, so we'll again start here, and so you've let us off on that. Thank you.
And I do think, and this is what I think has been really essential about getting this ordinance done, is to have a structured waste plan where this is their establishment, it is an extension of their establishment, and whether it's a takeout or sit-down full service, there has to be a plan in place. There has to be their own waste receptacles. I saw multiple times where restaurants that had outdoor tables set up were using the municipal bins as their own bins. So patrons were putting their trash in those bins, and that was the problem of overflowing trash and trash on the ground. We have to make sure that we enforce this, that we have a plan up front, and quite frankly, that's where we really have to be strict, because if it's not being taken care of, then this is a privilege that we're extending, and the privilege should be revoked if there's multiple problems with not having the trash. And I want to also mention that there's 2 trash plans that each applicant needs to submit. It's a trash plan for handling their takeaway litter and keeping their area clean. And the second part of their trash plan is where they're putting their bins out for collection, because now they'll be having tables where their bins used to be. So there needs to be a plan structured so everyone understands it and their neighbors understand what they're planning to do. So I think this is really good that all of this has been taken into consideration in this ordinance. So,
Thank you.
thanks.
David?
So while I agree, I think in a lot of ways about what needs to happen, again, I'm troubled by the notion that this is an extension of the establishment. And I hear what Michelle is saying. She wants to call it an extension of the establishment in order to require the maintenance that needs to happen. But I think it's a slippery slope, because if it's an extension of the establishment, then why should they have to allow anybody else to use the tables even when it's closed? And this is where the conflicts are going to arise, actually, is, why do we have to clean up when somebody who, why does Makmoon have to clean up when somebody came from Small World and left a cup on our table? And I think that the way it needs to be presented is rather that maintenance of the space is part of their fee for using the public right-of-way. It is not part of their establishment, but they're still responsible for it, for maintaining it, because that's part of the permit fee in a way. And that's how we keep the permit fees down, is by having them take on some responsibility in lieu of a money payment.
Right, I agree.
Okay, thanks, David. Mia, do you have anything to add? Or Leticia? Leighton? Yeah, look, I think Michelle said really well. There's a couple different parts to that litter plan. But no matter what, there's got to be a really good litter plan. And I think my perspective on this is impacted by the fact that I had a relative that I worked for that had a store on Nassau Street, and I worked at that store for a lot of years when I was underage. I didn't say that out loud, and through high school. But it was a regular thing. I was out there sweeping the darn sidewalk. And the merchants in town used to, the vast majority, religiously keep the sidewalks in front of their businesses clean. And that has fallen off so dramatically, and I fail to understand why that is. So I'm of the mind, we're granting you the right to use public space. You're messing it up. You are significantly helping to keep it clean. And anyway, so that is, I'm not going to try to figure out right here all the details on that, but I think that's got to be pretty darn important. All right, so that does litter. I just want to hit, I think we had advertising, and then I also want to hit hours of operation, and then hopefully we can finish this topic. So advertising.
Look, I think so long as it's advertising of the business, I'm fine with that, but I know that there's some restrictions in terms of the land use code. So we have to dig into that and find out, is that going to be part of a change in signage ordinance, or can this be part of this ordinance? I'm not sure that this ordinance can make that change, but I would be in favor of it so long as it's, approved, when it's historic, that it has to go through historic, and that it is only the business, it's not some other brands. So that's my feeling.
Yeah, I'm also fine with the advertising. I just don't want it to cross a boundary in terms of, I know I'm playing one note over and over again tonight, but to the extent that signage makes it seem like people who are not customers of the establishment may not use the facilities, we don't want that. So I like the idea of an umbrella with the name of the establishment. You might even have chairs, or, that have a logo of the establishment. By the way, that would help get wandering chairs back to the right location. So I think that kind of stuff is great. Signs on the tables, where it really feels unwelcoming for anybody else to sit there. And worst of all, barriers that have a logo for the business that enclose the space and make it seem like the seating area is only for customers of the business is a problem for me.
Advertising, Mia.
Okay, but I think we're sending really mixed messages here, and what are we deciding on?
We're not deciding anything. We're just
Okay, but
giving guidance.
but David, it's like if someone has, someone has this, they own a space, we're asking them to submit a plan, to buy the furniture, to be responsible for the waste. It's like, almost like an extension of their restaurant. I'm not sure that you can also say, oh, you have to let everybody else, like if there's another, food place next door. Let's just give an example, Mamoon's and Thin Crust. Okay, so there are not enough places at Thin Crust, so the Thin Crust people can come over and use for the tables at Mamoon's. I'm not sure that we are giving clarity here, and I'm not sure that's realistic what you're saying. And I'm not taking a side. I'm just not really sure what we're saying here, because I don't think we can have everything here.
We can come back to that one. Let's finish up with advertising.
Promoting the establishment, yes. Promoting brands, no.
Leighton, anything on advertising?
Just with regard to umbrellas, I wouldn't get too into the weeds on this thing. If you have an establishment, you can have an umbrella with your name on the umbrella, name of your establishment, and okay, let's do it. I mean, why are we going to create ordinance and then have all kinds of obstacles in it? I mean, why can't people advertise what they're doing and let it be at that?
Yep. So my only advice would be, whatever we put in here will not be in conflict with other signage zoning ordinances, because that's not fair to the zoning officer to put him in that bind. So if we need to change other ordinances, signage, et cetera, down the road, we can do that, but I don't think we should create a problem for some of the staff by putting what is a blanket exemption in this, or some sort of exemption. That's just my personal thought on that. Okay. So
But my understanding is that the ordinances that we have on the books now would not make this possible. I don't think they allow for.
Well, right. Okay. Good point. Thank you.
So I'm just
so staff
saying.
could come back and say, oh, by the way, we need to address ordinance blah, blah, and here's the parts you need to address. But I think we should do that with eyes wide open and knowing what we're doing. That's all. Okay, so let's just hit two more things, and then we're going to hopefully finish this. Hours of operation, and then I just want to get back to Mia's question about, are we really going to try to tell David, you got to let Mark use your tables. But let's do hours of operation, which are suggested to be extended from 10 p.m. to midnight. So let's focus on that one, and we'll start down there again.
7 a.m. to midnight, and I'm fine with that, because the operation will be what the restaurant operation is. It's going to reflect that. So not everybody's going to be open from 7 a.m. to 12. It's going to be, coffee shops early and dinner late and lunch places in between. So I think it's going to vary.
David?
Yeah, I mean, 7 a.m. to midnight is fine with me if that's, hours of operations that are permitted under the ordinance. We do govern when businesses can be open and can't be open, but I think from 7 a.m. to 12 midnight is permitted, so I don't know why you would close the outdoor seating when the businesses are open.
Mia?
Not only am I okay with the hours, but I would be thrilled if more restaurants had later dining hours, because the outdoor space may be open till midnight, but most places are not serving food that late, so.
I'm fine with extending to midnight.
Thanks. Leighton? Okay, I would just say, I'd be really concerned about extending to midnight. It might be great for the businesses, but if I live in the apartments above all these businesses, I don't think I'm going to be real thrilled about it. So I would just be concerned that we're focusing too much on the business aspect and not enough on the people that live above all these businesses. So I don't know that I want a whole bunch of restaurants below me being actively using their tables till midnight. Obviously, people are going to, I mean, we had this problem on Witherspoon Street during COVID. People hung out at the tables, at some of the tables, to all hours of the night. We had to have police go and chase people that are just sitting there drinking, et cetera. But I just, again, just a word of caution that saying, hey, you're good till midnight, I think we're going to have a whole different group of people in here at a future meeting saying, what the hell were we thinking?
And I would just say that I think people choose where they want to live. We have one teeny little piece of our town, which is the downtown, and we're one of the only towns in this area that has a downtown that people love and come to patronize. And we have a whole former township, which is absolutely dead quiet from 5 p.m. on. It's a lot of cheap housing there, so.
Yeah, well, if I got a 5-year lease, I'm going to be a little upset that the rules changed, but
Yeah.
no, I get it.
I'll just comment, this also probably intersects with the noise ordinance, because the noise ordinance requires a change in the decibel level at 10 p.m.
Yeah.
And so, similar to what we were saying about signage, we need some more guidance from staff on how those two would interact.
Okay, so I think we've given you mud to look through as far as that, so that's very good. That's good for us. The last item, I hope, is thoughts on, are we going to in any way mandate or push people to share their tables with other businesses? Just thoughts on that.
I think that there are some solutions in that. I would really like the Experience Princeton businesses to work with staff on how the communal, tables can work. Maybe, like I said, maybe there's 2 different fee structures, there's 2 different ways of setting it up. But regardless of whether they're communal or not, if they're communal and there's a lesser fee, they still need to be cleaned 24/7 by the establishment. Otherwise, you get into a situation where there's a lot of litter and trash on the street and it looks bad. So that's the one piece of this that really needs, I think, to be addressed in the ordinance, but the other piece, I think, can be addressed with the businesses themselves. Because, people were very helpful with their neighbors. They were very open to people sitting at their seats. But, I know, like, if something is in front of a store and I haven't bought something there, I'm probably not going to sit there normally. But if they're closed, then you're going to sit there. Mm-hmm. So I think that that's the main thing, is that they're not chained and locked up, but they're open to being used. And I think that we need to work with the businesses to figure that out.
Thank you. David?
And I feel like we need some more guidance from legal counsel on this, because I've made a couple references to what really is possible. I'm not a lawyer, but
Yep.
I've heard from different attorneys, including Trishka, that certain things are not possible in terms of giving away the public right-of-way. And so we need guidance.
Thank you. Mia? Anything on you already said your stuff on the tables, right? Okay. Leticia? Leighton?
Yeah, I was thinking about what David said, and I was just thinking, let's say you found yourself in Red Bank tomorrow at 3 o'clock, or Asbury Park somewhere, and you're walking down the main street there, and you buy a sandwich, and there's a nice restaurant there on the main drag, and you see that they got tables set up there and welcoming people that may frequent that restaurant or come in there and eat. Are you going to take your hoagie and sit down at that table?
I wouldn't, but that's not everybody.
You would?
No, I would not. But that doesn't mean other people would.
But but we think of it. Do we want to, as a town in Princeton, if we're going to set an ordinance aside for an entity to have the front of their building, to have it for their customers
Yeah.
at 3 or 4 tables where their customers are going to eat at, like Michelle said, most people will not eat there if they're open. I think that we're making a big thing about nothing. I think we what is it? We got a problem looking for a solution. This is not a big deal.
Okay, thanks, Leighton. I would just say, obviously, you guys can talk to Trishka and whoever in her firm. We don't need to get into it tonight, thank God. But you guys can figure out what all the legal ramifications are to help answer David's questions. But personally, I would never make one establishment provide their tables to another establishment when they're open. I would be very comfortable encouraging all establishments to share tables when they are closed. That just makes sense. But anyway, we can see what the legalese is. Yeah.
I agree with that, actually. I just want to say in closing that, you know, one of the things I hear more than anything about people, as a council person, of people who are moving to town, who want to invest in the town, who are enthusiastic about Princeton, the number one thing they say, the second thing they say is the school system. The first thing they say is, we love your downtown. There's nothing like it anywhere else in the area. And I think a big part of this and why we invested in Witherspoon Street was because this is unique, and we want to build into that vibrancy. It's part of what, you know, generates economic vitality, which helps, you know, to be practical, offset our residential tax base. There are all sorts of practical implications here beyond just which tables go where and who shares them. It is about building our downtown, and thank you to Councilwoman Lambrose, who has been such a longstanding and intrepid champion of that. This is all really exciting once we get past all of these, the nitty-gritty stuff, so.
Okay, so I think...
May I just want to clarify something. When I commented on how some of our establishments will allow anyone walking by to use the table and would share the space, I was referring to when they're not in use, not that they should be sharing, you know, allowing anyone to sit.
Thank you. All right, so I think we've exhausted everything. Jim, I'm assuming you have no questions for us. Hint, hint. But if you do, go ahead.
We're good.
Okay. So this was a work session. Thank you. Anybody that has thoughts in the public here or in Zoom, feel free to reach out to Jim, Deanna, any member of the governing body, or to Isaac, and add your suggestions to any of those entities, so we can keep moving this along. All right, thank you all. That was good. We got through a lot of stuff there. All right, so now we have ordinance public hearings. First one is ordinance 2023-22, ordinance of the Mayor and Council of Princeton establishing the property management policy for Block 102, Lot 6.02, Landwind 2 property located in Princeton, Mercer County, New Jersey. Is there a motion? Thank you, Mia. Is there a second? Anybody want a second? Thank you, David. Okay, somebody want to explain just what is the property management policy for that block? Do we know?
I think this is the, Deanna, the restriction against active recreational use. This is the deed restrictions. We purchased this property with a coalition of, a consortium of open space preservation advocates throughout the community, and as a condition of their very substantial contributions from their donors, they wanted it to be in perpetuity restricted, deed restricted for passive recreation. Is that about it? Yep. Okay, that was it.
Thank you. Yeah, I just want to make sure we always say what exactly it is we're about to vote on, so
thing.
people have some idea.
It's a good thing.
Okay. Any questions or comments on the motion? Seeing none, roll call vote.
Ms. Perron-Lambros?
Yes.
Mr. Cohen?
Yes.
Ms. Sachs?
Yes.
Ms. Fraga?
Yes.
Mr. Newland?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Ordinance 2023-23, an ordinance pursuant to the New Jersey Local Land and Buildings Law.
Mark?
Yes. Oh my gosh, it's a public hearing. Hey, thank you. It's all good. It's all good. Let me retract that vote. That did not happen. You did not see that. No. Anybody from the public have a comment on the ordinance 2322 about prohibiting active recreation from that property? Nobody in the room is jumping up. Thank you so much, Dolores. You can watch future meetings after you retire and jump in at any time. Anybody on Zoom? Okay, so just to do this the correct way, I will now close the public hearing, and I will now ask for the vote. So could we do the vote over?
Sure. Ms. Pearl-Lambros?
Yes.
Mr. Cohen?
Yes.
Ms. Sachs?
Yes.
Ms. Fraga?
Yes.
Mr. Newland?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Let's see if I get it right this time. Ordinance 2023-23, an ordinance pursuant to the New Jersey Local Land and Buildings Law, NJSA 40A:12-14C, authorizing the leasing of 14 Clearview Avenue to the Housing Initiatives of Princeton Charitable Trust. Is there a motion? Michelle, thank you. Leticia's got the second. And then this is a one-year lease to allow them to do their program of helping people in the community. Okay? Questions, comments on the motion from council? Are there public questions or comments either in the room or on Zoom? Okay, seeing none, I'll close the public hearing and roll call vote, please.
Ms. Pearl-Lambros?
Yes.
Mr. Cohen?
Yes.
Ms. Sachs?
Yes.
Ms. Fraga?
Yes.
Mr. Newland?
Yes.
Okay, ordinance introduction, ordinance 2023-24, an ordinance pursuant to the New Jersey Local Lands and Building Law, NJSA 40A:12-3, accepting the dedication of a permanent pedestrian easement on Block 2704, lots 23 and 76, Municipality of Princeton tax map between Van Deventer Avenue and Lincoln Court. Public hearing will be July 24th, 2023. Is there a motion? Thank you, Leighton. Mia's got the second. Now, a roll call vote?
Ms. Pearl-Lambros?
Yes.
Mr. Cohen?
Yes.
Ms. Sachs?
Yes.
Ms. Fraga?
Yes.
Mr. Newland?
Yes.
Okay, and on ordinance introductions, we don't discuss them because the public hearing's at a future date, and that's where you discuss it. Going on to resolutions, 23-234, resolution of the Mayor and Council of Princeton authorizing 2023 professional services agreement for community development block grant vision program with iCare, not to exceed amount of $15,000. Leticia's got the motion, Leighton's got the second. Questions or comments? Jeff, thank you to everybody involved in making that happen. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Okay.
Thanks, Jeff.
22-235, resolution of the Mayor and Council of Princeton authorizing an agreement with Duke's Root Control, Inc. to administer chemical root control treatment in various segments of sanitary sewer main in the municipality of Princeton for an amount not exceeding $35,000. Is there a motion? Thank you, Michelle. Leighton's got the second. Questions or comments? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
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 23-236, resolution of the Mayor and Council of Princeton authorizing change order number 2 to the professional services agreement with Whitman in connection with soil management and disposal at 298 River Road, and increasing contract amount by an additional $690,740 for new not to exceed contract amount of $2,214,109. Is there a motion? Thank you, Mia. Leighton's got the second. Questions or comments? David.
Yeah, in reading through this, I noticed there was it seems like a significant part of the scope is to demolish and remove concrete structures. They were described something like dry wells where there was gravel underneath, and I just don't remember having heard about these structures in previous discussions of the River Road site, and wondered if, I did reach out to Deanna this afternoon to ask about it. She said she would address it in the meeting.
Sure. So with the removal of the material on site, these two concrete walled areas were partially, they were excavated and the walls were partially removed, and they were left in a condition that DEP was concerned about, just exposed rebar protruding from concrete, not terribly clean or safe looking. So they asked as part of the cleanup work that be included in the scope of work to remove that. We've already been doing concrete removal and the rebar extraction, so it's not something different. It was just a new area, a new feature that had not been discoverable until they removed the soil material.
And-
We think that it's related to the old Princeton sewer plant that we had on the site.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other comments or questions on this unfortunate continuing to expand cost? All right, hearing none, all in favor say aye.
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 22-237, resolution of the Mayor and Council of Princeton establishing a municipal green team. Is there a motion? Thank you, Mia. Layton's got the second. Comments or questions? David?
Yeah, again, something I reached out to Dan about this afternoon. I noticed that the whereas clauses talk about involvement of BCCs on the green team as well as staff, but the listed members of the green team are only staff, and so I wanted to get a little clarification on what the involvement of BCCs would be with the green team going forward.
So the Green Team's goal and mission is to advise mayor and council on ways to improve municipal operations with sustainability initiatives. So in crafting this resolution, we have allowed for the provision of boards and committees to be part of the Green Team as needed. So this first 6 months, which is July to the end of the year, we're not envisioning that we'll be using any of the BCCs. So in the second part of the resolution, the now therefore section, we're only indicating staff members as well as Sustainable Princeton. Moving forward, we will be looking for this to be an annual resolution of council, at which point, if we envision for the next year's goals that we need assistance from those BCCs, we would ask that that be included in the resolution for that year. So it's kind of setting the stage to allow for whether it's the Pedestrian Bike Advisory Committee, Shade Tree, Planning Board, PEC, whatever, Shade Tree, what other number of flood and stormwater committees could be involved, considering that the initiative is to look at our municipal operations and to see how we can make recommendations that are economically and sustainably feasible.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So to the point of if it ain't broke, don't fix it, I want to say that the Green Team has been one of the bright, shining groups in the municipality under the leadership of Christine Symington and Sustainable Princeton that has actually been successful in maintaining the municipality's certification at a very high level and harnessing the goodwill and implementation power of all of the various departments throughout the municipality. It's not really a BCC thing. It's about the staff and the municipality complying with its certification actions. I think the staff and the various departments have, as they do, go to the BCCs in various actions in an advisory capacity. But this was an example of extreme efficiency of action, operation, and implementation, and I hope we will stick with what has been a successful model.
Yeah, my gut reaction is that if you want BCCs to advise the Green Team, but not be a member of the Green Team, I would feel much more comfortable personally, but that's just one person's opinion.
So,
I agree.
So just to clarify, this green team has been in operation
For a
in
very
recent
long
years?
time.
I don't recall having seen a resolution.
It seems to have lapsed, and this is the resolution lapsed. It's part of our,
6 years ago.
no.
I mean, I don't remember having seen a resolution about the green team since I've been on council.
I think it's something for the certification actions that you have to periodically redo, but I would suggest having that as a follow-up conversation with staff and Sustainable Princeton.
Okay.
But I know that a lot of work has been done. In fact, we just, if you remember, at the League of Municipalities with Jeff, our health department got tremendous awards through this certification process. So
Oh, I know all about the Sustainable Jersey certification process. I just
that's what
wasn't
this does.
aware that we have had this group working on it.
Yep.
Right. Part of an effort to make sure we all know what's going on. We're catching up on this stuff. Okay. Any other comments or questions? All in favor, say aye.
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 Okay, next we have a consent agenda of 2 items. If no one wants any of those items removed for further discussion, someone could move the consent agenda. Leticia is moving the consent agenda. Leighton second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
David, do you have a motion?
Move to adjourn.
All in favor, say aye.
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 We are done.
Mayor, we needed a second on that.
We don't, I was told we don't really have to get a second, so we're just going to, going forward, make the motion and I'll say aye. Okay, thanks again, everybody.